Welcome back to the Movement is Medicine podcast. Dr. Gene Shirakrabad here with Dr. Megan Weezer, and Dr. Corey is not here. How but replaced by Jim O'Neill.
Hello.
Corey's on the cruise, so he's not on the podcast today. Jim, you're back. You were here a couple episodes ago, and I got a lot of positive feedback on that episode. I think mindfulness, anything in headspace, is always well received. So I think we'll double back on that one. There's a bunch of things I wanted to talk to you about still, and you haven't. I don't think you've been on the podcast yet when Jim is co-hosting, because he's usually co-hosting for you, because you're the one that usually goes places or jail.
You're the one
Like
that has a
last time.
life.
Yeah, I started to listen to that episode, and you guys were talking about me being in jail. I didn't finish that episode, but
Because you were in jail.
no, my headspace wasn't there. I found myself like drifting off, and I was like, I can't pay attention to this right now.
Yeah, that was a pretty good episode. I thought, and so did the listeners, including your mom, who's
She actually listens to my stuff. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Aw.
Yeah. She really liked the episode. Here's what I wanted to ask you. I had this idea, this thought that I thought would be good to talk about. So like the other day, my son had a playoff game and they lost, and we had a great season. So I coached for the Little League team, and we won 12 games, lost only one game, and even the loss was an aberration. So they did great. And a lot of the kids have played with us for the last 3 years. But loss is hard, right? Accepting loss and kind of working through it. And as we're kind of driving home and talking through it, and this is why I love baseball, because baseball is a game of failure. It's constant processing failure. Literally, you fail 70% of the time, and that's considered great. So it's high probability of failure that's going to happen. But there's a difference between people that have the ability, not capability, but ability to process loss and failure and things like that, and take that as a positive and learn from it and move on. But then there's some people that get into almost a spiral, that it's this loop of what if. And they run through scenarios, but they never break through or away from this loop. They get on this cycle of disappointment.
I'm
So-
that. I am that.
Now, there's a normal level, and this is what I talked to him about in the team. I was like, what you're feeling now, you're supposed to. It's okay to feel sadness for loss. It's okay to feel sadness and disappointment for not achieving something, but it's not okay to be stuck in this loop of failure, loop of disappointment. So that's the question I wanted to pose to you. When somebody comes to you in this spiral, this cycle of never endless, what if, doubt, failure, loss, how do you help them, one, process, and then help them kind of break through that loss cycle?
Well, it's hard in the immediate aftermath of it.
Sure. Yeah. And I don't really mean in the immediate. I think immediate, you need to feel that, because that's part of grieving, right? You feel the loss and you go through it, and you should feel that. But past, like if it's weeks, months, years, some people never break through it. How do you help them work through that?
One of the things that's like a feature of MPEAK, which is Mindful Performance Enhancement Awareness and Knowledge. So this was a program that was based off of the stress reduction program. And a big part of that, and I'm sure some people listening to this have gone through resilience training, but it is developing compassion. So learning to relate to yourself compassionately. And you can define compassion as meeting difficulty with kindness. So most people, myself included, we're all hardwired to be very hard on ourselves, and especially with a lot of people who are very competitive.
Mhm.
You're very hard on yourself, very critical of yourself. You probably have perfectionist tendencies.
Most
And
people are like this, you think?
I would say a lot of high achievers are.
Okay.
And if I'm being honest, like a lot of your people in this community are like, they're not,
Yeah.
Mhm.
they're not looking to be at the bottom of the barrel here.
No.
You're looking for an edge.
Mhm.
You know that failure is going to happen. It's realistic. It's just part of what happens. I was kind of sharing a story about failure in golf, and maybe I'll share another story about my son too. what I learned and where I started to get better at it was identifying that called the inner critical coach in your mind
Mm-hmm.
that puts you down, beats you up, and there is no one worse at that than yourself. So learning to identify that voice in your head is a very key part of it. And even naming it, like giving it a name. Like that voice that's like, "Oh man, we sucked, we lost, like the season was a failure." Like,
It's my fault.
oh yeah, which then brings other emotions, right?
Right.
Like guilt or
Shame.
shame or
Yep.
something. Like so now you're carrying these sort of lower vibration emotions with you that are further stressing you out
Mm.
and putting you down and affecting your confidence and your self-esteem. Because the next time, there's another at bat,
Right.
and you can't hit, what is it, the Gunnar Henderson 460-foot home run, like if you're beating yourself up. And I've seen that with baseball players, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
just so hard on themselves. They're not even paying attention when the next at bat comes. So you've already kind of put yourself in the hole.
Yeah. And baseball is a great metaphor for life, right? This is not just sports specific. This is anything. You put pressure
Yeah.
on yourself to do something, and that doesn't come out with the same outcome that you want. And you focus on the outcome, not the process of the outcome. Like you could succeed 99% of that. The preparation, the work, all of it, 99% success, but the 1% failure is the actual outcome. And that's what you're focused on, is that 1%, instead of saying, hey, I succeeded for 99% of it. It just didn't turn out the way I wanted it. But everything else was great. But most people do not focus on the everything else. They focus on the high emotional impact, which is the outcome.
Yeah. And if you hyper focus on that, you can really do some damage.
Yeah. You mentioned grit, and Angela Duckworth kind of pioneered this a little bit ago, and she had a great book that she wrote about it. She's a
It's called
psychologist.
Grit, isn't it?
It's called
The
Grit.
book, yeah.
Yep. And her definition of grit is passion and perseverance. And I think a lot of times people have one or the other. Is if you have a lot of passion, like people get really gung ho about something, but passion burns hot and fast, that it burns out. Perseverance, on the other hand, is what if you're failing over and over again, or you're not getting to where you need to go? The point is, like, what's the point of persevering if you're not getting any traction? So both can lead to those loops. It's saying, hey, I've been doing this forever and ever and ever. I get nowhere. The other way around is I gave everything I have and I got nowhere. So
Mhm.
you can't have one without the other. So you have to kind of put the two together, but you still have to help somebody navigate through it, right? To kind of see the big picture. Like, is the zooming out an important piece of this? Saying, hey, step away from this situation and look top down and kind of see what's in front of you.
Yeah. So when we talk about mindfulness, think awareness. But yeah, one way to do that is to zoom out, if you can, but that's a skill, right? And so a lot of what I do is teaching people to develop metacognition, like observing your mind.
Hmm.
Hmm.
What are the thoughts you're having? Because a lot of times people are just in it.
Spiraling.
Well, but you're not. Yeah, like you can be, for sure. And like you're in this train of thought, and you're just cycling,
Mm-hmm.
and that becomes your stress reactivity cycle.
Mm.
Mindfulness gives you like a pause button where it's like, okay, hang on, what am I doing? All right,
Chill. Zoom out. What's the
well, I've
macro?
been thinking about how crappy I am for the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So I just beat myself up for 30 minutes, and it's exhausting. Right?
Yeah.
So like a body scan, you pay attention to your body, and like, man, like I'm
And then it's
killing
like, why am
myself.
I doing this to myself?
Yeah. So when you start to like see those patterns, then you're like, that's kind of like zooming out and like, okay, what do I want to do about it? What would actually be helpful? Or, if I'm burned out, maybe some of the best golf I ever played, like I was burnt, I took a break. I might take a week or two off, not touch a club, and then come back and play awesome.
Mm.
It just, I needed that reset.
Yeah. You mentioned the body scan or mind map, and I mean, there's different ways to talk about it. I think that'd be a good thing to just kind of introduce. What is a body scan? How do you go about it, and who can benefit from something like that?
I would say everyone can benefit from it, but it is perhaps not for everyone. but it's tuning into your body. So one way to think about it is that everything is energy. If I am stuck on like the shame train, I'm probably going to be feeling pretty bad. My energy is going to be very low. I think
Shame
there's
train. I can't. The shame train.
I pictured an
Jump
actual
on.
train when he said
Doot,
that.
doot.
or if I, like something happens, like your emotions have energy, your thoughts carry energy. Like if I am like happy, like I'm going to feel lighter maybe or experience joy. It's going to affect me different. But you feel it in your body. You feel stress in your body. So it's important that you tune into your body like it's an instrument. Like, where am I right now?
Mhm.
What am I feeling? And as you do that, you're going to find yourself catching your thoughts, and you're going to notice how easy it is for your attention to ping pong everywhere. So you start with your breath, you focus in on your abdomen. So some diaphragmatic breathing, and just paying attention to your in breath and your out breath. And then you settle into that, and then you begin to systematically direct your attention quite intentionally to various parts of your body, usually starting in a traditional mindfulness meditation, like going to your toes of your left foot and going toe by toe, which might sound ridiculous to some people listen to this, but when you start to tune into your body, you're going to start to notice that all these things that you've been carrying in your life start to bubble up. And that's when you start to do actual work.
That's important from a medical standpoint. We call that down regulation.
Yeah.
And I think what most people don't recognize is that when you're on that shame train is and really any high level emotion that you're feeling consistently for a long period of time is that you are in a fight or flight stage, that your nervous system is constantly ramped up. It's just because you're living in it, you don't realize how ramped up it is, that you're always in a place of danger, that your body is like, we need to escape, right? So it's always in this flight stage, until you force yourself to body scan and step away from that sympathetic response. And then it's both exhausting and liberating for people. They're just like, I didn't realize how tired I was, because they're always so ramped up in that emotion until they either crash or take control and bring themselves down through that scan. So I think that it's so important that such a simple thing can be that break to force you to realize what's actually happening within your body.
I totally agree. And that's how I got into this, really, from more of a professional point of view, is that I didn't realize like all the trauma that I was secondary trauma that I was experiencing being a therapist. How I was in fight or flight constantly and carrying all that with me, and I being in it.
Like carrying
It's
other people's trauma? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. One of the pitfalls of being empathic is you can very easily take on other people's emotions. And even if you're not, though, I mean, like that energy being around it,
still
but
feel
being
it.
in a state of fight or flight, and realizing that and being like, oh my God, like this is really having an impact on me. And so that's a big part of it, is like identifying like that. Okay, I do have stress, because a lot of people are like, well, I mean, life is stressful, but it's normal. I can handle it.
Yep.
Which is fine until you start to notice things happening.
Yeah, for sure. There's a great book, Body Keeps the Score, and he talks about that a lot. That your body there will be physical manifestations to more psychosocial traumas that you're absorbing, and trauma being not describing like somebody did trauma on you, but trauma is just traumatic, unwanted, unwelcomed situations that are happening to you over and over, because it could be micro trauma, which you can kind of classify to what you experienced, to physical trauma, to more aggressive trauma that most people kind of think of as trauma. But a death, it's kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts type of thing, that it's going to happen, and it'll make a difference, right? That how you deal
see
with
a
it is
lot of people, I've noticed, like when they get to like middle age, like I've had a stressful job forever, and now I'm starting to like notice things, or I feel anxious. I've never felt anxious before.
Yeah.
Or I'm starting to get this illness, or
Mhm.
whatever that is, like this pain here, or your body starts to break down, or you
Yep.
start to have some kind of chronic illness. Like, it's interesting.
Yeah. So let's finish this one out with this one a little bit shorter, and then we could certainly have a follow-up episode. What are your recommendations if you had somebody that's in this loop? They're going, look, I this happened at work or a baseball game or I was in a golf tournament, whatever it is, and I had this putt to win $500,000, or I had a runner on base that if I swung and hit it, or I had this big presentation at work that if I just nailed that, I would have had a promotion. I mean, anything. What will be your recommendation to start here to break through this?
Well, the biggest thing is to be kind to yourself, and it's kind of cliche, but really developing what we call your inner compassionate coach. And it is maybe somebody that you know, it could be a relative, or maybe it's someone you don't know, but just kind of respect, and just having that voice in your head, like give you, like, it's loving, it's supportive, like, hey man, like I could look at that $500,000 putt and be like, oh shit, if I miss this, I won't get the money. But you could look at it another way, like, if you make it, you've been training for this.
Hmm.
Give it a shot.
Yep.
Who knows what will happen? Like the way that you relate to yourself. Catch yourself being hard on yourself, because you will be, and be like, talk yourself up. Like, a lot of times, one easy way to think about this is like, if your friend was going through a hard time, what would you say to them?
Yeah.
And chances are you're saying something to yourself very different.
Yeah, isn't that funny? The irony of that, the advice you give to somebody else versus yourself.
It's fucking horseshit.
Speaking from personal experience, hey?
Yeah.
Like, so we call it yin and yang compassion, right? Like, you can be assertive and like kind to yourself, but in a way that's not like, I don't know, like just ruthless,
self-depreciating kind of thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys do it with us when we're, like lifting, like, give it, I'm going to go light today. I don't know, but why don't you get the barbell?
Yeah.
Okay.
See what happens.
Give it a shot.
Yeah.
Anything can happen.
Ultimately, there's compassion behind that, right? Because it's like, you will benefit from that.
Right. Step forward instead of step away, right? Step into it instead of away from it.
Which is a big part of things too, right? Like sports and life, like, you're not going to know if you can hit that putt unless you put yourself in that position.
Yeah, I like that. Being kind to yourself, I think, is an important. Seems trivial and small, but we forget that it seems easier to be kind to strangers and others, which is kind of what we're brought up to always be. When you're a child, be nice to this, be respectful, be kind to strangers, be kind to this. Nobody ever teaches kids to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, we're not taught to like trust ourselves or to
it's
like
always somebody else.
Self-talk.
We discount it, right? Like, oh, it sounds so simple, but it's like a game changer. Like, no, like, really do that. Like, love
it's
yourself.
hard to do it.
Yeah, because again, you don't have the reps to do it.
Yeah,
right? Like anything else, to kind of work through the other voice, where it's so easy to go into the emotion of shame and fear and all the other ones, versus saying, well, I don't want to do the easy thing. I want to do the best thing, which is kindness. All right. Well, you know where to find Jim. We'll put his link in the bottom of this podcast as well. If you want to chat with him and have him help you out, you can do that. If you like this podcast, go ahead, subscribe wherever you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to hear more of these. And if you want Jim more often on here, let us know. We'll just extend Corey Screws for another several weeks and have Jim fill in.
Stay out of jail, Megan.
I will.
Yeah, make sure Megan doesn't go Jersey on anybody.
To be clear, I've never been to jail. I was doing jury duty that one day.
That's close enough. She was still.
I was
sending someone else to jail.
Yeah.
Sending someone else to jail, actually.
Jail was involved in some way. All right, thanks for listening. We'll catch you again on the next episode of Movement is Medicine podcast from Recharge.